I'm Jono Buchanan, and in this video we're going to look at Logic's version of the Pultec low EQ trick. This is one of the most classic tricks in recorded music history, sort of ever since the birth of the EQP-1 EQ made by Pultec, or Pulse Technologies for short. And the interesting thing about this particular EQ, it allows you to do amazing things with the bottom end of any individual sound. And the reason for that is that the tube-based EQP-1 contains the opportunity to both boost and cut or attenuate volume at the same frequency. And in the manual it said there is a boost dial and an attenuation dial, and you mustn't use the two things together. So guess what all those pioneering producers did? And it turns out that when you both boost and attenuate at the same time using this EQ, amazing things happen. Okay, there's a little bit of background. Let's just listen to the track we'll be working on. Okay, so up here at the top of my production, I've got this sequenced TR-808 drum pattern using some classic 808 sounds. But what I want to do with this kick drum is to take it from this slightly pokey sort of quality to something which is much fuller and richer and rounder. And to do that, what I'm going to do is to go and find this Pultec style EQ. Now that's obviously going to be in the EQ section, and it's one of the vintage EQ collection plugins, and it's this vintage tube EQ down at the bottom. And when I open this up, I actually get a chance to see two separate EQs made by Pultec, or modelled after that design. This lower one we're not going to need. This is the MEQ5. That's a mid-range EQ, and I'm just going to switch that off. What I'm interested in particular, is the low boost and low attenuation dials here for this low frequency. Now, what I can do is to firstly choose this frequency, and on the original hardware for this is a switch that literally just allows you to sort of swap between default positions. But in Logic's version, actually, we can be a little bit more selective than that. I can choose the frequency area that I want to work on. I'm going to take this down to around 30 Hertz to begin with. So what we've got a chance to do is to boost and attenuate. Now you'd think that if I was to turn up a volume at the same time as cutting it by the same amount, those two behaviors would sort of cancel themselves out. We'd end up with the same volume as before. But the thing that was so unique about the Pultec EQ is that actually the filters involved in these two circuits aren't directly matched. In other words, what we get is a boost at one frequency and a cut at one kind of close by, changing the overall tonal behavior. So let's start by just simply boosting. If I turn up the volume of the frequency at around 30 Hertz, my kick drum goes from this to this. So we get loads more weight, and it stands to reason that if I boost this even more, we're going to get even more weight. Okay, now to understand exactly how this trick works, after the EQ, what I'm actually going to do is to put in Logic's multimeter plugin. Now I'm going to find that in the metering section, and here's multimeter, and this is going to allow me to see the kind of EQ shape which is going to be produced by this plugin. I'm going to put these two side by side so we can see the way that they behave. Let's just make the multimeter a little bit bigger. Okay, so far what we've got is, if I again bypass the plugin altogether, this is the way that the overall frequency shape looks for this whole kit, and obviously we're focusing in on the bottom end so we can focus on the kick drum. And with the boost, now the area where we want to look isn't just in the kick, but it's in this slightly low mid-range group of frequencies that are above. Because what happens when we boost and attenuate at the same time is that actually we retain this low frequency push, but what we're going to find is that we're going to carve out some space from those frequencies around 125 Hertz. So what we get is this push at the low end, and we get a little bit more space in the frequency area above it. And that's coming from this sort of boost and cut at the same time. Now, you may well be thinking, yeah, but the values are different. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll turn this up to maximum, and we'll turn this one up to maximum as well, so that both of these dials are working at sort of full charge. Again, what I'll do is punch this in halfway through. And it completely redefines the role of the kick within this sound. Now, this low end trick doesn't just work on drums. Obviously, anything with a bassy component is going to potentially benefit from this. Be careful. Obviously, by increasing the amount of bass to this extent, you are going to suddenly provide a lot more energy in that range. So particularly if you're thinking about using a trick like this on the kind of 2-bus or the output of your track, so effectively you're adding an enormous amount of bass across the entire mix, I would certainly be cautious as far as that's concerned. But if you've got a sound within your mix which could use a bit more energy, obviously this is a way to achieve that. Okay, what we're going to do is to dial these both back a little bit. I'll take them down to around sort of 7.5, 8-ish, and what we'll do is listen in context. So I'm going to again take the EQ out altogether, so we're not listening to it. We don't need the metering anymore either. We're just going to use our ears now. And what we're going to do is to listen to this loop the whole way through a couple of times, and then I'll punch in this low end trick. And you can hear there's a really dramatic difference. Now, one last thing to say, I've put this EQ on the track stack that is playing all of these drums. And as we've heard, yes, we get a bass boost, but what we also get is this slight attenuation in the low mid-range, which, by the way, is kind of where some of the snare drum is. So the cost to me, in terms of the way that these drums sound, is that yes, I get more kick drum, but I get a slightly thinner snare. So one way around that, of course, would be to apply this EQ just on the drum, the kick drum track, rather than across the entire drum bus. So think about where you want to apply this plugin if you want to use this particular technique. So within this video, what we've done is to look at this classic Pultec low end trick. We've discovered that by boosting and attenuating by the same amount, we don't get volume cancellation of those two behaviors. What we get is these kind of slightly out of kilter filters, which allow us to actually get this slight spike at the bottom end, or a dramatic one if we want, just to give everything a slightly rounder, fuller, bigger feeling at the bottom end.